What's up, Penn State fans? It is April 1st. That is Thomas Frank Carr. I am Greg Pickle from BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. There'll be no fooling around on this show. We may have a little bit of fun. We will have a little bit of fun, especially with
We
you
fool around, but we're not trying to deceive anybody.
Yes, as our co-host in the chat, today is April Fool's Day. A just quick PSA, just remember, check your sources. Visit us over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Listen to the videos here on the YouTube channel. We're running a 50% off special at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com right now for spring practice. A lot of good intel over there. There's also a lot of, I'll just call it junk, that will show up on the internet today that you may find on the internet somewhere down the road that was meant to be consumed on April 1st and as a clear April Fool's Day joke, but you may not realize that when you read it in June because Google or the almighty algorithm spits it out to you. So with that little rant out of the way, good morning, T. Frank. Welcome to April.
Morning.
Penn State is nearing the third of a way through its first spring practice under Matt Campbell.
Yeah, I want to stay on that for a second. Honestly, first off, I did not realize you had such a burning, passionate hate for April Fool's Day, but I also didn't think about your reasoning why, as somebody who is like, this is your job, is to report facts, and suddenly there's a whole day where the internet lives forever. That is even more of a bizarro world than the internet has turned it into, with AI slop creating things. Right. Now we have April Fools with AI slop. And so, like, the ability to deceive and to live forever and to be confusing. Like, I've never considered any of that when it comes to April Fool's Day. I just always thought it was kind of a dumb holiday. Like, holiday's even a strong word for it. Right. It's just, like, a dumb cultural event on the calendar that some people participate in. And, you know, I don't want to be, like, a huge buzzkill or anything, because, like, you know, some people like want to have fun with it and like it's hard, feel like it's harmless, but that turns out to not be the case when it comes from like official sources. If I'm reading you correctly as to your biggest problem with it.
Yes. Somebody, I guarantee at some point over the next week, month, 6 months before the season starts, somebody will, like Nittany Eagle Brad says here in the comments on the BWI YouTube channel, I hear that Penn State landed 5-5-star recruits overnight. Yeah, somebody at some point will have come across a April Fool's recruiting related post and get very excited only to be very disappointed very quickly. So anyway, check us out over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Again, a 50% off an annual subscription sale running right now. The On3 national team is crushing it. Pete Nakos and co. The Rivals recruiting guys, Steve Wiltfong, Alan True, bringing you up-to-the-date intel along with Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz from BWI. So check us out over there. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It is April 1st. T. Frank, we were at Penn State's post-practice media availability following spring practice number 4 on Tuesday. You guys were able to hear Sean, T. Frank, and Nate recap that a little bit yesterday. We're going to get into more of that today. But let's start with the S&P Plus Rankings from Bill Connolly of ESPN. If you're not familiar with it, longtime data guy, longtime college football reporter who has been doing these rankings to help give you a guide to where teams are starting the year. And they change throughout the year. Obviously, weekly they change in season. If you're not familiar with it, the SP Plus is basically, he puts 4 factors together to come up with his numbers, and they are returning production, recent history, recent recruiting, and then the effects of coaching changes. I don't envy T. Frank him trying to do this right now. In the age of the transfer portal and with how much coaching change takes place. I can't even fathom the work that would go into putting this together. I'll drop the link in the comments then. But to make a long story short, they have Penn State at number 17 to start the year with 15.7 points. Ohio State leads the way with 31.8. What I think I found most interesting about this, T. Frank, is that based on his offense numbers, he has Penn State's offense based on those 4 factors ranked number 14 in the country. Obviously, a lot of that is built around what those guys did at Iowa State. But I
a lot of returning starters from Iowa State's offense, which, you know, like, I get that. It's just a funny thought to have of like, oh, they've got a lot of returning starters from a different program, because like if you had done this with Penn State's returning starters, it would be absolutely gutted because they lost all of those seniors at all those positions.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that he felt that way. Obviously, he likes the Penn State special teams. He has the Penn State defense in the top 30 as well. But just wanted to cover that. We do update it weekly over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com in the fall. But has Penn State at number 17 right now, which is in line. I always find it interesting to compare his data, T. Frank, to the preseason polls that the media comes up with, whether it's a group of media members like they do over at ESPN, whether it's one person's top 25 like you could find from Brett McMurphy, Ari Wasserman, Andy Staples at On 3. However it is, I always am curious to compare the data to the opinions that people have. Obviously, those have some data built into them as well. But and again, the main takeaway for me is that his numbers see Penn State at this point of the year, as we sit here and talk, not even halfway through spring practice, as a top 20 team, which, again, is not any higher. It's right around the average of where they were in the two early media polls. So I think we at least have that baseline to work with this Penn State team as we get through spring practice.
Yeah, so is it kosher to put up it's a free article, so I was going to put up the full top 25 on the screen. Yeah. Is that cool? Okay.
Yeah, we'll drop the link in the comments, too, while you do that. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So, obviously, there's a couple of things, because I'm learning about this. I've never really ingested the S&P Plus Rankings. We've talked about it here before, but I've let Greg or somebody else kind of, lead the conversation. So, I was studying it before the show today, because I wanted to digest this and have an informed opinion. The first thing I find interesting is that we're doing... Is it subtraction when it comes? Yeah, it's got to be subtraction when it comes to the offensive number minus the defensive number to get to 31. I'm just doing this live on air, trying to figure out how these teams are getting where they are. So 8.8, like in golf, Ohio State is number 1 with an 8.8 SP Plus ranking for defense, and their offense is 40.6. So that's much higher than Penn State's 33.6 in terms of the gulf between number 1 and number wherever they are 14th. I think in terms of what they have here for Penn State, and if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see Penn State's 15.7 is 33.6, and then an 18.6 on defense, which is 23rd. And reading his rationale, last year's production is taken into account. I think this is a optimistic starting point for Penn State, because I do think we're going to find this defense is going to be better than last year. I'm pretty confident about that. Some of the changes they've made, the kind of outlook that, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, talking about the defensive secondary. Last year's defense was an abnormality in how bad it was compared to Penn State's historic defensive strength. They go out and they get a top defensive coordinator in Danton Lynn that everybody wanted. And they go out and they invest in that side of the ball in some deficiencies that they have had. Now, you can be skeptical about their ability to rush the passer, or you can be skeptical about their defensive run-stuffing ability. I'm not, in terms of their run-stuffing ability. I think that that's going to be something that's at worst, it's going to be good. It's going to be, how do I phrase this? It is going to be serviceable at best. These are players that aren't bad at football. And then when you factor in the fact that, the secondary and some of the talent they have back there, I think if 17 is the starting point, that's not that they're going to go up from there, because I think the defense is better than 23rd, based on what I've seen of them and kind of what they've talked about, what the plan is with this defense. Yeah,
it's just so interesting because we obviously, and you listening, know the Penn State as best we can anyway, with so many new guys as well as possible. But it's really hard to put it into context. Look, Ohio State has a ton of great players back. Oregon has a ton of great players back. But when you look at the 14 through 18 area, where two Penn State opponents, the only two, by the way, on the 2026 schedule, USC and Michigan, are slightly ahead of the Nittany Lions. It's only by a couple points, and you just wonder, where are those teams at this point? And you can read as much as you want, but there's just so much new across this sport that, like I said, big undertaking for Bill Connolly. Appreciate him doing it. But yeah, it gives you a ballpark of where Penn State and its opponents are by the numbers based on what happened last year and what coaching changes have happened at this point in time. So we'll see how it all plays out. That'll get updated a couple more times before the season kicks off. I'm sure we'll chat about it at some point, but another, again, indication that this Penn State team looks likely to start the year in the top 25, probably in the top 20. We'll see how things shake out when the polls start coming out closer to the summer, and obviously the first AP poll in August. But that's that. The SP Plus rankings, the first ones of the 2026 season. And, for Penn State, I think you're right, T. Frank. I think it's a reasonable place to be. Maybe, again, it's even hard to get too granular, I guess, with it when you know that Rocco Becht's not a full participant during spring ball, and the receivers that came from Iowa State are currently not complete participants, and there's some other guys in that boat as well. So it's been an interesting start to the spring for Penn State, and we'll see how those numbers change as we move forward.
Yeah. Last thought here, just kind of a random tangent, which is I'm wondering if you don't have Rocco Becht out there right now during spring practice, you don't have Alex Mansky out there right now during spring practice to work with the offensive line. Because, like I've said before, Rocco Becht has chemistry and timing with his receivers, at least from a fundamental baseline perspective. I think that was something that they needed to get better at last year. Brett Eskelson, his first year starting, Chase Soule, his first year starting, and neither of those guys were healthy throughout the full year. So this group, even though they're coming from a previous team, they do also need to work on some of that stuff. An offseason of chemistry would be good for them. But at the same time, it's not coming from zero, like the rest of this team that we've talked about with trying to build a team on the run in year one. But the offensive line does not have chemistry with the quarterback to get the cadence and all those things to understand the offense as a whole. So we've seen a lot of offensive lines throughout our time, Greg, just crazy cycling, right? The left guard changes from one play to the other, the left tackle changes, the center change, maybe not the center, but there's a lot of change during fall camp. I'm just wondering from a perspective of, I don't predict they're going to do this, but would it be good for them to settle on a starting five early and allow all of that to gel together so that they don't have to worry, they can get more reps together as a full offense where they kind of missed that in spring football? Just kind of a thought of projecting what we have now into the future as far as what you just talked about with chemistry and bringing everybody together.
Yeah. One quick final thought. Bizzo asked about how accurate the SP Plus ratings were. I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me at the moment, but pretty. I mean, as far as a system can go, I recall his against the spread picks being somewhere, I think, in the 55 to 60% range, which is very good. So I think SP, it's not perfect. No system is. I think he'd be the first to admit, but certainly a good tool to use. And then I'll transition to another chat question here, T. Frank. If Rocco gets hurt, is the season over? So here, and we're going to talk about Rocco Becht. He is one of the features of today's BWI Live Show because we had the chance to catch up with him on Tuesday at the Lasch building. So this question is one I've received and seen talked about a good bit, be it on social media, be it on the Lions Den message board, be it here in the YouTube comment section. And I guess so that's almost the case for every team if they're starting quarterback.
That was my thought too.
Yeah, so there seems to be this forgetfulness of what happened last season. Not that, the season was over when Drew, it was over anyway at that point. But, Ethan Grunkemeyer, we all remember, of course, he had to go on the road to Iowa. No easy task. And Penn State did almost win that game, but it didn't come out on top in the end. And so, I keep seeing this, with Mansky not available and obviously Connor Berry, the Division III transfer, being the de facto number one really right now until Becht's fully back. But the number two when Becht is available for drills during practice. I just keep hearing that, if they lose Rocco, the season's over. And it's that's the case for most teams, regardless of whether the quarterback is fully healthy in spring or not. Could it, bigger, is there less drop-offs in some places between 1 and 2? Yeah, maybe, probably. I'm sure there is. But I guess my whole thought has just been, T. Frank, that, this conversation keeps coming up and I think it should be an accepted fact that if you lose your starter, yes, your season is almost likely, certainly not going to go where you thought it was going to go.
I was trying to think of a team that had a really good backup or one that everyone was really excited about. And the one that came just to mind immediately was Missouri with Matt Zollers, because Bo Pribula goes down. They were 7-1 when he was injured, I think, something like that. I'm doing this all on the fly, so I apologize. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were 5-1. I forget where exactly he gets hurt in the season. But then down the stretch, they finish 8-5 for the year, and Zollers is the quarterback for a good stretch of that time. And everyone was very excited. Penn State fans were mad that Matt Zollers wasn't on this roster last year because he was a guy in Penn State's backyard, a five-star quarterback, 6'4", 214, a very advanced freshman for his his age and all those things. And he was not good enough for them to then, finish 10-2 and make the playoffs. So even in good situations, if you are pouring all of your time and energy into a starter and that guy's getting all the reps with the number ones, you're not going to have a better guy on the bench. Like, you're just not going to have a guy that you're like, you know what? We don't want to play him because this is our guy. Like, he's my boy. As much as Penn State fans think that's the case about Bo Pribula or about Tommy Stevens or about Will Levis or any of the backups historically, James Franklin, there is a self-preservation policy in order where you're going to play the best guy possible because you want to win games. Now, can somebody be wrong and, have a view that is not correct? Sure, I guess, but not so wrong about such an important decision with such an important player and position. So, this is just a long way of saying, yeah, if Rocco Becht goes down, great. If Drew Aller goes down, great. You're not going to be... If Drew Aller went down in one of the rare exceptions is when they had him in 2023 and he got injured and Bo Pribula got them through games in 2024, when Drew Aller went down.
Yes, and so I think you hit a good point there. But at the end of the day, you lose your starting quarterback. It just is typically not going to go well for you for the rest of the year unless you have a situation where you have a backup who is somehow managed to overcome some of the things you talked about and still be capable of playing at a level close to the starter. Just not an extremely likely situation. Anyway, let's talk some more about Rocco Becht. The Penn State quarterback said he is getting close to being 100%. He is doing a lot of mental reps right now, a lot of coaching on the sideline during team periods and 7-on-7. His good news, I think the best news that came out of his news conference yesterday, T. Frank, was that his left shoulder, which is the one that he had the surgical operation on for a torn labrum, that's his non-throwing shoulder, said that one feels good. Now it's about getting the throwing shoulder back up to speed because he had time away from throwing, obviously. So he's not in the 7-on-7 periods yet, not on the team periods yet. But as far as I can tell, T. Frank, things are moving right in the correct direction. I believe Matt Campbell at one point said he was ahead of schedule. I'll take his word for it. I am not a doctor or a trainer or a medical expert or any kind of expert for that matter. But I just got the sense, we'll talk about it more in good vibes, that he feels good about where he's at right now.
Yeah, and here's what he said about his shoulder and the
I think it's kind of day by day right now. My left shoulder where my labrum tear feels really good. Now it's kind of just conditioning my right shoulder just because I haven't thrown with it in a while. And so, it's been getting sore easily. So the more throws I can get within practice throughout the next couple practices, I'll be able to scoot into 7-on-7 soon.
So I take two things from that. The first is Rocco is basically saying what he thinks and what he feels. It sounds like he's on a pitch count. And so this is not me trying to question any of what they're doing, but it is more of if you're on a pitch count, it's not that he's just on a pitch count, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because if he was just on a pitch count, why wouldn't he would be doing 7-on-7 and not doing positional drills and throwing, in individual periods. And he would be doing more of maybe some of those things that we've talked about previously about getting in chemistry with the receivers and stuff like that. So I think it's more than just that, but it does sound like primarily what he's doing is that's the progression back from getting that shoulder conditioned for more rigorous throwing, which I think comes down to where you're throwing the ball as well. So if you're doing individual work, it's not going 20 yards down the field. You don't have to rip it into a tight window as opposed to, some of those variables that come in with 7-on-7 where you're trying to make a play as opposed to work on throwing the football, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And here's my other question. If Rocco Becht was not coming off of shoulder surgery, and whether he was at Iowa State or at Penn State, how much more would he be doing? And the reason I bring this up is we hear a lot about the spring. Obviously, we heard about it last year, but last year was not the only year we heard about it, and you'll see it across the country. Some of these guys that are veterans and have been in the system for a long time, they don't need as many spring practice reps. It's actually preferable not to give them as many because you want to develop the guys behind them. So that would be my big question, one that we didn't get a chance to get to, and I'm not really sure. I don't think we would have got an answer on it anyway. But, when obviously as new as everything is at Penn State, you would want him to get as many reps as possible, but it's still true that he's a veteran guy, and he probably would not be taking every single first team rep anyway. So I think that's worth keeping in mind too. But he's making,
but he'd be taking more, like in this situation now without Alex Mansky. Right. I firmly believe, like, in order to run the drill correctly, or the 7-on-7 or whatever it might be, to get everyone the maximum amount of work, like he would still be getting those critical reps as opposed to taking every rep with, and you're right, he would not be taking every first team rep that you would want to give to some of these younger guys, but it would be more, I think, than it would be without a quarterback depth, which they just don't have right now.
No, and it is a bit of a problem, and certainly I'm sure those guys that are Connor Berry, who is a veteran college football player, albeit at the Division III level, and then your freshman Peyton Falzone and Case Evans, plus walk-on Jack Lambert. I'm sure those guys are loving it and are trying their best to maximize what they can do and show the coaching staff during this spring practice period for whatever role they might end up having this year and beyond. But yeah, obviously you would love to have your number one quarterback fully healthy, fully ready to go. I got the sense, T. Frank, that he is approaching the point of at least getting into the 7-on-7 action. And even if you got, I don't even know, half would be great, but I think if you got even 30% of your spring practice with him being able to do almost or everything, I think you would take that and run.
Yeah. We're approaching a dangerous position of, this is the story to start camp, right? It's also, we've talked about it so much that it's about to, it's at that tipping point of, like, are we talking about it too much? Which you'd rather be on the overside of that than the underside, because, like, there are things they're doing to try and get all of these guys the work they need to get. It just is like, it's been 3 straight days now where we've had this particular conversation. And yes, I am looking forward to when he's back out there so we can, maybe assess some different things. But until then, this is something that I found interesting, where he mentioned, I don't remember if you were here for this or not, because you spent a lot of time with Rocco Becht on Tuesday. He actually talked a little bit about the VR headsets and the quarterback lab, and how exciting the quarterback lab is.
I think, because I can't get all the reps on the football field, I'm able to go on that VR headset and, get the reps on there. And you can change the speed of it. So, you're really going faster, looking at the defense, things faster, processing things faster on the VR than you would on the field. So it's a great, advantage that I think us quarterbacks have, and everybody uses it. It's great for the younger guys who haven't been in the offense for as long as I have, and them to just go on the VR and see the defenses and see the routes. And so, it's been good for us. A lot of guys have been getting a lot of reps, and the coaches, he probably said it, but they can see how many reps each quarterback is getting. So that's great for the coaches as well to see how each guy is adapted to the playbook and adapted to this program.
I was not there for that, so I'll let you run with it. But it is interesting. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think that this is helpful. But I have some skepticism about how much virtual reality can actually help you as compared to just doing it physically with your body in reality. I don't want to downplay it, but I also don't want people to think like, oh, Rocco Becht is just in the VR room and that's working out so great for him. And I know there's examples of working for guys, and it can help you with the mental side of it, but it is also the physical execution of the play with your body that introduces the variability of everything that goes into playing football. And so I think this is one thing we have absolutely made a big deal about. Like, that has been fair enough that, like, we've talked about it because it was such a secret, and then now that we get what it is, it's like, okay, that's cool. That's helpful. Did it need to be this much of a secret? Like, that doesn't seem like that's a huge deal, but what, again, from the outside looking in, like that I don't know that I'm, I don't know what I don't know in terms of, like, the value of those things, but just from me, if I'm thinking about how I learn, I don't think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think that it is a tool, one of many tools that Penn State has in its toolbox, and college football programs across the country obviously have in its toolbox, but not an end-all be-all in my mind in the end. But when Rocco Becht is on the field, not in the VR lab, he is able to see Penn State receivers in action, even though he's not necessarily throwing with them during the 7-on-7 periods, during the team periods. Interesting receiver group this spring, as we mentioned, Chase Sowell, and I'm going to let you pronounce Brett's last name.
Brett
You nailed it
Eskelsen.
last week. Yeah, go ahead and say that again.
Brett Eskelsen.
Perfect. Are both limited this spring, so some other guys, like at other positions, are getting a chance, younger guys, at the receiver spot. One name we keep hearing a lot about, Karon Brookins, an Iowa State transfer who came to Penn State along with Matt Campbell and co. Rocco Becht talked about him on Tuesday at the Lasch building.
I think his size says it all. You know, he's a 6'5" guy, and he's lengthy, and he can jump high. He's athletic. He brings a lot of energy to the field, and when he makes good plays, you know, he'll show you that he'll make a good play just by his energy after the play. But I think the thing that he got better at was probably getting into the playbook. You know, last year, young buck, you know, knew what he needed to do, but didn't know what everybody else around him needed to do, and you know that comes into effect when there's a certain play where you need to rub a certain route so the guy can get out wide. And so I think that's what he's been able to do here with just the veterans and the guys that he's been able to come over from Iowa State with, is get into the film room more and learn the playbook even more.
Interesting talent here, T. Frank. This is not the first time, like I said, that we've heard about Brookins. And I should also note that Zay Flowers has come up, another young Iowa State transfer. Kobe Howard's obviously been the talk of spring ball. Rocco Becht talked about him a little bit yesterday as well. But Brookins is a guy who, for better or worse, and you never know if words in April are going to translate to production in the fall, but for better or worse, unprompted, plenty of guys in this Iowa State program, whether it was head coach Matt Campbell, the quarterback Rocco Becht, or others, have kind of gone out of their way to give Brookins a shout-out this spring.
Yeah, and it makes sense, like, kind of the feedback that I've gotten and kind of the drumbeat we've heard is the guys who are standing out this first week are former Iowa State players, right? So both of those receivers we're talking about here are guys who know the offense, have played in the offense, and are probably running with the ones, in the situations where they're doing some of these 7-on-7s. Probably those guys are up first, so they have an opportunity to make some plays, and therefore they get then mentioned as guys making plays. And I'm not trying to reduce it down to just that, but opportunity is the driving force behind some of these things. Brookins is super interesting because he is, like, watching him on film in high school, which is now 2 years old or 2.5 years old, whatever it is, because I think he even missed his senior season. So our last chance of seeing like a large cross-section of what he can do, he is a jump ball guy. So big, athletic, can jump. So when you're 6'5" and you got a massive frame and you can jump, like, that's a quarterback's best friend. Where you feel like you can just throw that up and you can maybe not be the most accurate player in the world, and that guy's going to help you out. So I think that's something that Penn State hasn't had in a while. Tyler Warren aside, at the receiver position, it's been a while since they've had a guy that can win jump balls, and there's an opportunity for him to be a vertical threat that doesn't have to be the fastest guy in the world and doesn't have to, not every pass has to result in a touchdown, in terms of like a 60-yard completion for a touchdown.
Right.
If you throw the ball up 20 yards down the field, he high points the ball, you get a first down and an explosive passing play. That is a valuable part of this offense, and one that I think fits into the consistency of what they want, which is a deep threat from the receiver position. So not having seen him run a whole lot, and I think he looked good, at 207 pounds or whatever he is right now, filled out, looks great in person. And I think can be a part of the rotation. The thing I'm curious about, Greg, and where I think all of this actually matters, is in the margins. Because at Iowa State, Eskelsen and Soul were 60% of all the receiver snaps. Not the targets, not the receptions, just literally plays on the field. They were 60% of the snaps at receiver last year. Do they want that, or is that what the result was because of the receiver room they had? And who has the opportunity to take those 40% of the snaps or eat into that so it's a more even split, right, between those two and the field? And so Brookins, Robinson, and Kobe Howard are the three guys that we've heard so far. I would be hard-pressed to think it goes farther than that, given how much they want to play tight ends.
Yeah, at this point, I think that's your clear. You have a clear top two, and then I think you have a clear top five of those guys you just mentioned. And then from there, someone's going to have to do a lot of work to get onto the field, earn the reps. You're right about the tight ends. Obviously, Ben Brahmer will be a big part of this offense. Big guy, standing 6'7", looks every bit of it. And so, yeah, I think that it goes without saying that for this Penn State team and this offense to get where it's wants to go. More even production out of the receivers will be helpful, but if somebody just wants to go be a star and be a Jeremiah Smith, so to speak, I don't know if that player's on the roster, but the idea being, if somebody wants to be the dominant guy there because he's so good at getting open, so good at being reliable for Rocco Becht, I think Penn State and its fans will take that in a heartbeat. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we'll talk about it possibly a little bit later. But to me, just outside looking in on April 1st, a long ways away from September 5th and the opener with Marshall, I think the key is just to get this receivers room to a point where the offensive line got to a few years ago, where we don't have to spend every offseason, every preseason, and half of every season at least talking about whether they're going to be better, talking about why they aren't what we thought they were going to be, and so on and so forth. Even if they can play at a level that makes them, and I don't want to use the word forgettable because that's not the correct word, but, playing well enough that you don't really think about them. Like the long snapper equation. No one should know the long snapper's name because they only know it when they mess up, right? You need your receivers to have more of an impact than that. But, a baseline level of that, you're not sure who caught it. You're not sure what his number was, but it was a catch. It was a first down, and that they blocked on the 60-yard touchdown run, yada, 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 would be certainly a point of progress that I think Penn State and its fans would take in a heartbeat.
Yeah. To that end, I think everyone's favorite that is a Penn State fan because he was here and he's one of their guys is Kobe Howard. You asked Rocco Becht about him. I apologize. I did not get that one clipped. What did he say, and what did you take away from the conversation about where Kobe Howard is as a Penn State receiver who might be part of that equation of one of the faces that is a positive force and not a frustration for fans?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that Kobe Howard is, of course, the guy that we have talked about on this channel, maybe more than any other player outside of probably Drew Aller over the last year and a half. And he's having a good spring. Everyone noticed him right away when you walked into the practice. It was open to reporters last week at Haluba Hall. His teammates have talked about the offseason that he had. Rocco Becht was effusive in his praise of how Kobe Howard gets off the line of scrimmage, how he's able to beat press coverage. And his work ethic and his time in the film room and all of that. So, I don't know if it can be the summer of hype for Kobe Howard, considering what the last year was for him.
He had a fall of hype and then a winter of hype and a spring of hype. He has only had hype his entire career.
Yeah, I would say this. I foresee a situation where by the end of September, we're either going to know that he is what we thought he could be, or at least on that track, or we're going to know that maybe his lack of playing time last year was for more valid reasons than what we or I or whoever think, based on how things went last season with his usage. So certainly he's going to get every opportunity. He seems to be taking advantage of it right now, and of course the key will be developing a relationship and chemistry with Rocco Becht once he's able to get back throwing fully. And we'll see how that all shakes out. But yeah, very high praise from Rocco Becht for Kobe Howard. Wouldn't necessarily expect anything else, but at the end of the day, it goes without saying that him being a bigger part of Penn State's offense probably means better things for Penn State's offense.
Yeah, and this is where we're just talking at this point of I don't know what the split is going to be in terms of 11 personnel and 12 and 13 personnel, because in order for everyone to get this, and actually, do we have this or did I delete it? I deleted it. We had a conversation. We had a BWI mailbag question from a couple weeks ago that was asking, is Penn State's receiver room going to finish top 3 in the Big Ten in receptions and yards? It was either receptions and yards or receptions or yards.
Yeah.
You need to have the opportunity to do that. I don't think that this group is going to get 150 targets or whatever you would need to be number 1 in receptions. There are other schools that from a scheme perspective are going to feed their receivers in a way that Penn State is not going to do, because they're going to run the ball and they're also going to play tight ends. So to me, it's yards per completion and it's average depth of target. Yeah. If you have Eskildsen and Soul averaging 12 and 17 yards per reception. That is a sign of health in the offense. If they get to, you could in a situation get to a point where you're 3 in total yards per, for this roster for the receivers, and be 10th in targets. Like, I think that would be the efficiency of getting the explosive plays, getting the chunk plays is kind of more in line with where they might be going than playing 3 receivers, and Kobe Howard and Zay Robinson and these other guys are getting a ton of time on the field, because the flexibility of the tight ends, the value of what they can do to the defense is core to what they're trying to do on offense, which is force the defense to put bad coverage players on the field and then abuse those guys in coverage with more athletic players at tight end. Or in another situation, bring everybody into the box, and then your receiver, that is your one receiver that's on the field, has a one-on-one with a corner, and you're basically making it like basketball, right? So let's give another example of, just like, because we talked about him, Karon Brookins up against a 5'11 corner, a team that's their number 1 corner, and suddenly you have 3 tight ends on the field, you play action fake, and he's one-on-one, and the safety's in the middle of the field, or wherever, however you align it, where it is straight one-on-one. And that guy has a disadvantage because he is 4 or 5 inches shorter than Karon Brookins. And you just throw the ball up and you get 20 yards, and you simplify the offense for the quarterback, you simplify the read, and you make it so that these things are in your favor to create matchup problems with the defense. Not necessarily like scheming guys into situations where they have the advantage, as opposed to like, we're going to run a play and like this concept has to work. The concept is going to do the heavy lifting, which is what it was previously, as opposed to kind of some of these things I just described within this offense.
Feels like a good time to make a segue to a part of the show that was not on the rundown, but I'm going to put you on the spot anyway and see how it goes. So Rocco Becht talking about Taylor Mauser, and you're talking about this a little bit here. He said, I think Mauser is a unique offensive coordinator. He wants the big play. He's not conservative, and so I think that's good and bad. But, for me, he's the one that's just calling the play. Us players have to go out there and execute it. Thoughts on that, T. Frank? Because I think someone in the chat said, if I'm not mistaken, let me find it here, Z-Man said never having a deep vertical threat or attempt in the playbook had its downside for sure. I don't think you'll have a lack of that this year. I don't know if it's going to work, but when he says Taylor Mauser wants the big play, and that's good and bad, what do you think he meant by that?
Well, it's good and bad because sometimes those plays lead to 2nd and 10, right? Or that you put the quarterback in a position where he's throwing into a coverage that isn't ideal. And I've shown this before of where they are in terms of relation to the scheme and what they want to take anyway. So if you're playing 8 yards off the ball and then you bail deep in a cover 3 or in a quarter situation, and Rocco Becht throws the ball deep to Chase Soule anyway, like that's the aggression in this offense. Where previously, Penn State would have had a check with the offense, with the quarterback and the receiver, that if they play off coverage, or, we'll take the underneath. So we'll convert this to a comeback route, we'll get 8 yards, and we'll set up 2nd and 2. And Taylor Mauser's offense doesn't do that. Like, they do have some of that in there. But what they want to do is they want you... This is the concession, okay? So if you are playing cover 3 and you're adding a safety into the box to stop the run, that is the defense saying we are taking away the run and we're giving you this opportunity for a deep ball in one-on-one situation. And what the defense is gambling on is that a deep completion is maybe a 50-50 chance. The odds are that is going to be a win for them more times than it's not. But when it is a win for the offense, it's a massive win. Penn State wasn't taking those options to throw the ball into those coverages, whether the quarterback decided not to do that or the scheme decided not to do that. Overall, that was part of the problem. This offense does not have that in it. It wants to go for the throat. In all situations, it is going to, if there is that one-on-one opportunity with a zone coverage or with a man coverage, they're going to attack. Rocco Becht's skill is deep ball placement on these vertical plays where he can throw the ball into the bucket and he can get some back shoulder throws, and they have enough of a threat that if you do that, you make that gamble of we're going to stop the run and dare you to throw it deep. I'm going to use this phrase from Gen Z and say, okay, bet. Let's find out what happens. And so that is, to me, like he's describing that in Taylor Mauser's offense, where they're not going to be conservative. They're not going to take what the defense gives you in the sense that we saw previously. They're going to go ahead and take from the defense what the defense is trying to not give you in that situation. Got you muted. My rant went on too long and you got muted.
Yeah, that's okay. I was muting myself to take a drink of water and then forgot to undo it. That's kind of just how it goes some days, especially on April Fool's Day, no less. But yeah, I am just fascinated to see how this offense looks. It'll be different, obviously, in some ways than what Penn State fans have grown accustomed to over the last decade plus, but there will be some similarities in terms of tight end usage and a focus on the ground game, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I mean, I think that running backs room is really interesting when you talk about Carson Hansen and what he's done at the college level. He looked bigger than I thought he was going to based on TV film from when we saw him in practice last week. Quentin Martin could be anything. James Peoples could be anything. So it's an interesting running backs room that Penn State has. Under
That's the part that concerns me.
Huggins. Yeah, go ahead.
That's the part that concerns me is the running back room. Do they provide that complementary explosive element? Because it can't all be through the passing game. You've got to have a complementary explosive element. We've seen Penn State's offense in previous iterations that didn't have a game-breaking back. And Carson Hansen is capable of it. So, like, I am not saying he's not capable of it. But it's not a consistent thing I expect from him. And when he does it, it is a bonus. You know, it's something that is above and beyond his baseline skill set, where he can get a 60-yard run, he can get a 50-yard run, but he's not the guy making the house call. A little bit of Karon Allen here in the conversation of not the same way that he goes about doing it. He goes about doing it with anticipation and vision and straight line, like knowing the point between the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. He's that kind of running back as opposed to Karon Allen, who's going to make six guys miss on the way to a 40-yard run. He's an efficient, explosive back, but I have a concern of that translating to the Big Ten, where the athletes in the secondary and the overall defensive investment are much higher than they are in the Big 12. And so to me, like, that's the biggest leap for the guys that I think can play at this level. Peoples, does he provide that for you? And Carson Hansen, can he give you enough of that where you have that to complement the passing game and you have a truly balanced offense? That I'm still skeptical of that with this running back room.
Yeah, and I think that is what's going to make this offseason, as it continues, so interesting, is that there are a lot of cases you can make one way or the other for all these things, because until we see it on the field on Saturday in the fall, there's just a lot of questions between the injuries, between the newness, between the question of does this translate to this and that and so on and so forth. Some of them you feel like you can put to bed. Some of them are just not going to go away until the games actually start. And for a lot of people, regardless, and the non-conference schedule is just so interesting to me because I just feel like no matter what, if Penn State does poorly, it'll matter. If Penn State does very well, I think a lot of Penn State fans will still say, I want to wait and see this against a Big Ten team. I'm not buying it. So, well, I'll be curious to see how that all plays out. But yeah. That's the running backs room. That's our chat about Rocco Becht and the offense. Penn State, of course, getting ready for spring practice number 5, which comes up on Thursday. Plenty to come on that. T. Frank, let's get into our good vibes segment for the day. Check this out here.
You have got to buck up, man. You cannot drag this negative energy into the tournament.
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
All right, good vibes time here on the Wednesday edition of BWI Live April 1st. Go ahead, T. Frank.
Greg, I don't ever give it on-air checks. I don't. But if we're going through good vibes and you come in with the same like energy that we had during the news segment, give me a little more. Give me a little more. We're in the good vibes segment, Greg.
I'm going to do my best for you, T. Frank, but it is April 1st, and I have had a day so far. So, all right. Let's do
totally
it.
Totally understand.
The idea behind good vibes is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Penn State has made players available now twice during spring practice. We've also heard from Matt Campbell twice since spring ball began. And our goal today is to just give you a sense of what we heard, what we learned and what it sounds like when you're sitting there listening to it. You can see some of the videos from guys on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel here by clicking over to the videos tab. But T. Frank, I'll let you lead the way while I try and get some more pep in my step. Who's giving you good vibes? Who leads your list of good vibe guys?
Yeah, and I don't want to go too deep into all these things just because like there is that's defeating the purpose. We just had like 20 minutes on like the X's and O's and stuff like that. And like, I just want a kind of a surface level thing of like, I'm feeling good about the Penn State secondary. I'm getting good vibes from the plan here. I had heard previously, like this is it's intentionally an easy defense for players to learn. And I've learned a little bit more about like how that works. And they've talked about how it's pretty uniform for guys and everyone learns the same drops, et cetera, et cetera. Also like, the talent and the focal point of the safeties and how they're trying to work it all together. I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect, but I'm getting some good vibes that this is going to be a good plan for this secondary. I think there's some stuff I'm concerned about, but overall, like, you know, I like it. I think they've got the talent to make this work. And then I broke my own rules. I did a little bit of looking to make sure like, is my gut on the right track? Because I kind of overlooked the secondary for D'Anton Lynn because it was just kind of a consistent hum in the background of like his secondaries have been good over the 3 years that he's been in college football. UCLA was 7th in passer rating allowed. They had 4th in INTs among would-be Big Ten teams in 2023. And then last year, USC was top 10 in PBUs, forcing completions, and interceptions. So they get their hands on the ball consistently, and there has been a track record of production for D'Anton Lynn in the secondary. So this is something where I think they got the talent and they've got what seems to be a pretty installable system. So yeah, I'm getting good vibes from everyone coming from the secondary. It's also the place that we talked to the most, right? Like we talked to Deion Broomfield, we talked to the safeties, we talked to the corners so far. So we've definitely gotten more of that flavor than the front seven. But so far, like I think it's been pretty good. Like that's been my good vibes so far through the first week and change.
I think so much about the reason for that is it's a known commodity, right? You know what Marcus Neal is able to do at Iowa State. Zion Tracy obviously is, I think, as Fitch just wrote in the headline at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, a Swiss Army knife. You know, Aldavian Collins is back. Darius Dixon is back. You have a cornerback room where guys are familiar to Penn State observers, and you bring some talent with you from Iowa State, mix in some other guys, and it's a room you can feel good about. And if you have questions about other parts of the Penn State defense, hard to blame you. But when you look at that secondary, it is a spot you should feel good about, confident about, pleased with what Terry Smith, Deion Broomfield, and Lynn, as the overseer of the defense, have been able to put together from a personnel standpoint. And I do feel, obviously, there's some ways to look at it in terms of the pass game, and sometimes they can be your best unit and still be put in an impossible island situation based on your pass rush.
That would be the concern, right? That'd be your problem this year.
Did I just bring down good vibes? That's my fault. But anyway.
That's all right.
I do think that when you look at this group, there's a good reason for Penn State fans to feel really good about it. I just like the talent. I think Collins is an underrated player and an underrated keep for Penn State in the portal cycle. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Darius Dixon. I think Marcus Neal is really good. It's the spring of Zion Tracy. We'll see if that turns into the fall of Zion Tracy. Certainly, if there's a guy who has bided his time and done some really good, underrated work for Penn State during the course of his career who deserves a chance to try and take the spotlight, I think Zion Tracy probably is at the top of the list from this current roster.
He's got the best vibes going right through the first. He's the star at camp so far from what we've heard and what people have talked about is like how good of a football player he is. And I think Penn State fans don't necessarily get it, because I've said this before, he's a film watcher's dream because of the different things that the different situations he's been put in, and he's played reasonably well in all of them in vastly different roles over 2 years. You get the sense, and this is my vibes that I get from them, is that they think they can take the best of both worlds of him playing safety and him playing nickel corner, being a man coverage phenom, and put him in any situation, and he's going to help fix the defense. So that's a big part of the good vibes is Zion Tracy and the creativity with which we're hearing about D'Anton Lynn's plan for him in this secondary.
Yeah, and Marcus Neal was kind of that fixer for the Iowa State defense at times. So if you can combine his abilities with Tracy's potential abilities to do that, we know what he can do, but in a spotlight feature fixer kind of role, you're going to feel even better about your back seven, and then it'll be all about shoring up the front seven. And obviously, we'll see how that all shakes out as camp progresses. It sounded yesterday like Matt Campbell feels decent about his linebacker situation. Certainly getting Tony Rojas back to full strength will help with that. There's no question. But at any rate, I do think that, that's a very good pick. They, as a group, to have good vibes about the Penn State secondary is off to a hot start.
What about you?
Switching over to the offense. So there was two things that jumped out to me when you put this on this morning's rundown of the BWI Live Show. Thanks to everyone being with us. Please do Frank, do me a favor. It's free to do it. Like the video, subscribe to the page, make sure your notifications are on. Somebody was asking about a wrestling show earlier. I don't know when we're going to do that. We have to wait until the portal situation sorts itself out. I told Frank at this time a week ago that we'd be good to do a show today. It is 10:50 a.m. and nothing's happened with the portal. It's hard to do a wrap-up show that looks ahead when there's no news about the portal yet. So we're going to get that done. I'm not sure when, but stay tuned for that, please. If you have notifications on, you're going to know when we go live. As Frank's been telling you, the schedule is a bit different compared to what we've become accustomed to for spring football practice. So there's some changes in the schedule that we don't, necessarily foresee at times, or we have to tweak things for other reasons that are not football schedule related, but personal schedule related. So please like the channel, subscribe, give us some good vibes. We appreciate it. Looking at the offense, Frank, it was the offensive line that gave me some good vibes. So listening to Rocco Becht yesterday talk about Brock Reicher at the center from Texas State, the transfer who will compete with Dom Rowley for that job eventually in summer camp. Listening to Ryan Clanton talk, this is going to sound very basic, but it's just simple. I don't know if, Ryan Clanton, where he ranks among the nation's offensive line coaches, but I certainly know this. The guy is a good interview. He is a high energy guy. He is a strong communicator of what he believes in and what his players need to do. And at the end of the day, man, he just wants his offensive lineman to hit the defensive lineman in the face, legally, of course, but he has made clear that is what he wants. I believe his catchphrase is run through someone's face or something to that effect. And so I think that offensive line is going to be in pretty good shape. You look at the tackle situation, Donko, when he comes back, will be in the mix. Malachi Goodman looks really good as a young Penn State offensive lineman. Obviously, Garrett Sexton and Owen Alasini are back. So I'm going to give good vibes there about just that whole situation that Penn State is working on there. It seems like they have depth inside to work with, and it's not going to be as experienced of an offensive line as Penn State had last season. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. We'll find out. Like Trevor Burr strikes me as the kind of guy, Frank, who is just going to plug and play, and you might forget his name. You might forget he's on the field, but you're going to know his job's done. That's what we saw at Iowa State from him. So I think fans should have at this moment should feel good about the offensive line. I think that they have the pieces to work with there. And certainly between what they brought in and what came back, there's no reason to expect, I don't think, a drop-off at this point in time.
Yeah, they're the unit where you say Penn State lacks star talent on either side of the ball. And I'm like, have you seen the offensive line they've put together with Malachi Goodman kind of growing into his body? Like, this can be, and again, projection, can be a really good unit. Now, you're relying on some young guys who haven't done it before, but they have to. It's not like we're talking about this where they had to bring in an offensive lineman from the portal, and you're like, does that guy have what it takes? Or it's like, no. These guys, they're really, really physically talented, and it's can they figure it out mentally? And then you talk about Ryan Clanton, and like, he is the epitome of a good vibe, right? Like the way he talks, his cadence, he doesn't, like, your question never frustrates him. He gives it like real thought and gives you an answer. He, as you mentioned, a great communicator, but just the way he communicates, it's a good vibe. Like you feel comfortable asking him a question because despite the fact that he is a large human with a ton of tattoos and, looks like he belongs in a biker gang, he's just a chill dude. And so like, I agree. Excellent choice here for good vibes with Ryan Clanton.
Yeah, I just think that group's moving in the right direction. But we'll see. Time will tell. Obviously, Penn State has plenty of work to do on offense and on defense as spring ball continues. They're not even halfway through, not even a third of the way through spring practice yet. But yeah, those were the secondary was an obvious pick. I'm glad you made it. Certainly the offensive line you feel good about. And then I'll just note here quickly that Rocco Becht just He's an experienced, polished guy, not just on the field, but in the media setting as well. He gives good, thoughtful answers. He's willing to share some things he's witnessing in practice and what his takeaways are. As they want him to be like another coach on the field. I believe Matt Campbell said, and I might be paraphrasing and get this wrong, but an extension of the offensive coordinator on the field. Yeah, you're fourth year, fifth year guy should be that. If he's not, you have a problem, and you've done something wrong in the development process. But he certainly communicates like that. And again, I don't know if that's going to translate to wins and losses. I don't know if it's going to make him a Heisman Trophy contender. But certainly all the pieces are in place for him to be successful at Penn State, and whatever that leads to, we'll see. But certainly talking to him, you can see why he's had success at this level and why he could have continued success at Penn State.
I'm going to throw in a bonus one here, which is also a shameless plug for tomorrow. I'm getting good vibes from recruiting, and I just mean vibes. I'm not like telling you any inside information, but having done this a couple of times around the sun now, and the words and the headlines and the things that, I've just the brief cursory view, I'm getting some good vibes for Penn State football during spring recruiting, and I think all of the things that Penn State fans want to hear. I'm not saying like 5 stars are going to commit or anything, but like they seem to be on the right track. So good vibes from recruiting. You can learn more about that tomorrow on the BWI Live Recruiting Show, which is at 2 p.m. And if you ever need to know when the show is, you can go to our Twitter feed, where you go to the BWI account or my account. I try to put out a graphic each week of when we're going live. I think next week it's 2 p.m. across the board so that it's all uniform. But, just make sure you check out that. Probably I'm going to try and put it out Saturday or Sunday so you get extra time to know about it. But that's both a bonus good vibe and some promotion and some information, wrapping it all up like a sandwich for you here at the end of Good Vibes.
Speaking of some information you should know, BetMGM is a partner of the Blue White Illustrated BWI Live Show. If you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. If your bet loses, just make sure you use bonus code ON3, letter O, letter N, both capitalized 3. When you sign up, obviously the Final Four is kicking off this weekend in Indianapolis. Do you know what this time of year means for college hoops? Lock in for every game and make your March moment when you bet with boosted odds. Activate your odds boost token for any March matchups bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your bet wins. Here's how it works. Your March Matchups odds boost token has already been dropped into your account. No opt-in necessary. Add a March Matchups bet up to the specified maximum stake to your bet slip. Then activate the token. If you win your bet with the token activated, you'll score extra winnings. How does this work? Let me tell you how it works. I was sitting at a local establishment on Saturday. I had a feeling that Purdue would score, not Purdue, what game was that? There were two losing thought. Too many games of late and switching sports between baseball, football, and basketball. Anyway, the game, I wanted the team to score the first 10 points. It was the Arizona game, to score the first 10 points. It was right around even money, the line, but I was able to use this token to get better odds, and they did end up being the first team to 10 points, so I cashed a little bit more money than I would have otherwise. So check that out. They have a bunch of March Madness props up, obviously, for the Final Four. College football, Heisman Trophy winners, and conference winners are up, too. You can, of course, bet baseball there, other things as well. So check them out at BetMGM, and you'll enjoy, I think, the experience you have with them.
See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer now for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are not withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossings Casino and Hotel.
All right, D. Frank, coming down the home stretch here of another BWI Live. You mentioned recruiting. You can check out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, all the recruiting coverage, who might come next, who might commit next, who might visit. Ryan has a story up on 2 4-stars who are coming to town this weekend. He had a story last night with a new Rivals recruiting prediction machine pick. And certainly that's exciting for Penn State fans to go check out. So you can join us now for 50% off. The Ultimate Fan Bundle includes access to BWI, complete access to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, and Lions content message board, plus On Three's national team and recruiting intel from the Rivals group as well. So check us out over there. 50% off at bluewhiteillustrated.com. An annual subscription gets you access to The Athletic as well. Penn State Spring Practice 5 coming up tomorrow, T. Frank, but your focus will be on the recruiting show here on the BWI YouTube channel. And yeah, spring practice chugs along into the holiday weekend. Penn State will be on the field Thursday and then Saturday. I think Saturday's roughly the halfway mark. You can't divide 15 in two. So the nice thing is you can do a pre-halfway mark story and a post-halfway story if you really wanted to. I'm not sure I want to.
Greg thinks in article count. Like Greg always thinks in how many articles can I write based on the information at hand. And here's something, Greg, I want to end the show with this because I don't know if this is just good vibes or if there's a value to this, or at least I don't understand the value to it. I know it's good.
Yeah.
But one thing that has been a steady drumbeat from Matt Campbell and from Penn State football has been this emphasis on having the Lettermen be a big part of what's going on with this current team. And so they put this out on social media the other day that they had a bunch of former Lettermen in to speak to the team. They have, a bunch of policies where, Lettermen are they're doing more to reconnect with the past of Penn State than had been done previously. And so I'm just throwing this out there because I don't necessarily know. I know it's a good thing, and I know that it's an important thing. What is the tangible value of your Lettermen being a part of the program more thoroughly? What is the tangible value of these people talking to the football players and being, a part of this process for them? Because I couldn't point to a thing, because, I'm obsessed with the details of like, hey, how do you convert a third down?
Right.
What do you think? Like, I'm open to suggestions about like why this is a valuable thing, why this is important, because it's not something that I'm just well versed in, if that makes sense.
I just think that when you have so many new faces and young Penn State returners, when you have those two groups that maybe don't have as much of a understanding. I think Matt Campbell said it well yesterday. Like, he just wants these guys and his staff as well, and him, to know what they're playing for, to know what those that came before them did, how they did it, how they bounced back from hard times, what they did to celebrate good times, how they kept progressing. And I just think it's drawing that line with the program's history that a lot of guys probably have no idea about. I mean, you think about it, but there's so many things. Like, how many people looked at that as those photos and had no idea? They probably looked at it and said, well, who is this guy? Who is that guy? Fans that are longtime fans. Right. And so for the players, you connect with these guys. You might not know who they are, but maybe you see them on the sidelines. Maybe you are connected to them in the business world somehow in some way, shape, or form through NIL. I think the other thing is we always talk about, the NIL opportunities and things like that. And you want your Lettermen who have the financial means to do it to get involved. Well, sometimes it's nice, I think, for them to just meet some of these guys before they give you money. I'm not saying that was this. Yeah. That wasn't what this was about. This is about much more than that. But I think
because I agree with you. Either. I agree with you there. And I didn't want to bring the NIL or that kind of like calculated view of things.
No,
first.
Right, yeah, because it wasn't. I want to be clear on that. But at the same time, I think that all this ties together. But they're making a clear effort to connect through the generations of Penn State football alums, and it can't hurt. Rocco Becht talked about having a 40-minute one-on-one chat with Todd Blackledge. Is that going to win Penn State another game this year? Probably not. Could something from that get Penn State a first down in the situation or change Rocco Becht's preparation?
Is it going to keep the Beaver Stadium crowd from turning on you if you lose too many games? So, because here's the thing, is like, I guess I'm looking at this from my point of view, which is like, fans love this. Z-Man is in the chat. He loves this. Success with honor, basic blues, Joe Paterno, all that stuff. And that has been something from the very beginning of like repairing the fan base and bringing it all together. And I didn't want to make it about that either, just fan service, because I don't think it is. Yeah. So I'm glad you kind of went into that, because that's a gap in my understanding. That's a gap in my knowledge of being able to explain why this is important to the players and to the success and failure of Penn State in the 2026 season, which I think you're doing these things intentionally, all in this holistic approach to try and get the best possible outcome for your team. And I don't want to make it sound calculated, but it is like, there are those things that are there about it.
Yeah, you never know which inch is going to be the one that propels you to the place that you want to get to. And if it's through your Lettermen, great. And if it's through something else, also great. But I'm sure those guys feel appreciate it, as they should.
Yeah.
Obviously, Matt Campbell is recognizing what came before him as part of the reason that he is here. And again, I think it's just at minimum, it's a nice gesture to get those folks and their families back around the program, interacting with the current version. And obviously, I think there's plenty of lessons the current guys can take from it. So yeah, I would agree with you. I would expect to see plenty more similar social media posts. Their social media approach is pretty good. They are pretty active on social media. In the Matt Campbell era. So anyway, T. Frank, I think that'll wrap us up for this edition of BWI Live. You have any final thoughts?
No, I just want to know about, I want to know more about, as Z-Man said, Penn State being a blue blood program and how that's going to be helpful for them. So that was my final thought.
All right. Well, that's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. It's been the Wednesday, April 1st edition of BWI Live. Don't fall for any April Fool's jokes today or any other day. Check your sources. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, always a great source for that. For Penn State news, obviously. The guys will be back tomorrow with the recruiting show, and something tells me there's going to be a few extra things to talk about that might not be on the rundown right now. We'll have to wait and see. But for Thomas Frank Carr, I'm Greg Pickle. We will talk to you next week, and T. Frank will talk to you on Thursday. Hit the like and subscribe button on the way out. Thanks, everyone.